Hello everybody, my name is Sneaky Snake, and today we're going to be going over my IGL January tournament experience. This was a tournament that lasted for 3 rounds so far. Depending on how I do, I might make it top 16, but I kind of doubt it. But the 3 missions that we played were Last Launch, Armory, and then finally Frontline. And for each of those missions, I played against Vanilla Eugene, Vanilla Combined Army, and then Morat respectively. Each game was pretty hard. They were all very competitive. I got to give all of my lists a good run and see how they fared against, the top of Infinity players. So, yeah, overall, great experience. I'm hoping to play some more, but because we're going to be changing up the lists, I kind of figured this would be a great opportunity to review the ones that I took and how they did and, their weaknesses and that sort of thing. So up first, I've got the most niche list of the 2. This one I was taking specifically for Armory. Off the bat, you're going to notice that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heavy infantry. And this is just for the event that I end up not being able to go second. Because obviously if you get to go first and if you get to go second in Armory, you're kind of set. You don't have to worry as much about holding the Armory. It really just comes down to, can you clear it and then put some 10-point Fusilier into it. And so this was kind of an attempt at, well, what if I do get second? How can I, or sorry, what if I do get first? How can I kind of mitigate that loss? How can I make sure I can actually score some points? And so this was kind of an attempt at that. Fortunately for Armory, my opponent chose deployment, so I actually chose to go second into his counter deployment. It was a little rough, I guess, on the first turn. Whenever you're getting counter deployed against, you generally want to go first, just to kind of mitigate the loss of the back-to-back deficiency of having to deploy second and then also having to get alpha striked. But Armory is such an important mission, when it comes to turn order, and you really want to be going second if you have the opportunity. And it ended up working out really well for me. So I'm just going to go over the list really quick and then I can talk about the match. So first up, we've got a Fusilier Corps, Impure with the Kamau Sniper. He's a pretty important piece for this list. As you can see, I also brought a Helot Red Fury, and I'm kind of pointing that out because sometimes you don't want to leave your Kamau Sniper standing up because he'll just get toasted by a tag. And in that case, you kind of want a really, I guess, reliable ARO piece that's going to be able to stave off your opponent pretty well. And I think an added bonus of the Helot Red Fury is that nobody really expects it, and so a lot of times they'll kind of roll up with a maybe subpar gunfighter. It's not too often that this happens, but sometimes you can really surprise people with the Red Fury. And so in that case, he's a little bit of a gotcha type piece, but yeah. So it's just a pure impure core with the Kamau Sniper Paramedic LT and then 2 decoys. Next we've got a Harris team of orcs. So I've got the orc HMG Patsy with her grenades and really most importantly her NCO and specialist trait. And then finally the orc BSG with the Tinbot. Obviously, Tinbot's very important for any sort of link team of HI. You want to be keeping the hackers away, or at least making them spend more orders to put you down. On top of that, the BSG is going to be really good inside of the armory, And same thing with Patsy with her like SMG, her flash pulse grenades. All of that stuff is gonna combine to be a pretty nasty armory taking Harris, I guess. That's kind of their job, obviously. And so, really, at the end of the day, this core was kind of built at, or this Harris was kind of built as like, if my Kamau Snot dies, I still have another gunfighter to use on active turn. And then on top of that, they can hold the armory pretty well. However, I do have two other HI that can do that job pretty well, and that's going to be both of my Montesa paramedics. I chose the paramedics because they both have BSGs, and having a template weapon with 2 wounds is pretty crucial for holding the armory. Obviously, Montesas are very good in CC, but on top of that, having the template weapon is kind of going to create some nasty forks sometimes, and it's going to make them better at clearing the armory as well. Yeah, Montesas overall are just really good units. I usually hate taking motorcycles, if I'm being totally honest, just because they're really fat, so they take up a ton of your DZ, and they can't go prone, so they get shot to bits in a lot of matches. But they managed to survive for most of the game this round. So yeah, they did pretty good work. Really, their strongest suit is the fact that they can hold the armory pretty effectively, and they're a pain in the butt to remove. And so they actually do end up kind of accomplishing that role, even though I did take second turn. Every single turn I put in a Montesa, and they were really, really annoying for my opponent to remove. And he only really managed to kill one, and I think the other one just ended up surviving the whole game because mimetism, boarding shotgun, cover, and good CC just means that it's pretty unlikely that he's going to be able to remove it without some sort of dedicated fighter. And lastly, well, I guess I've got 2 other things to go over. So the Zoo Cobra KHD, he's really just there as like an optional gunfighter. The killer hacker device is okay in a pinch if you like really need to clear a hacker out of the room, and you don't want to make that sacrifice with your HI, I suppose. On top of that, breaker combis are good. They will always be good. I know a lot of people don't like them for some weird reason. I guess because BTS is pretty prevalent. But the Zoo Cobra breaker combi always does work for me. He's a specialist. He's a hacker. He can just do so much. And I feel like every single game he ends up doing something really important. They're also vet troops randomly, which helps you get net undermined sometimes, which is pretty great. But yeah, overall they're pretty awesome profiles. And then finally I've got the 3 Helots. Yeah, Helots for Armory are just incredible pieces. I'm gonna go over at the very end kind of why they were the MVPs of this tournament. Helots are always the MVPs, honestly. But yeah, they can watch the armory doors. They can keep people from entering the room efficiently. They kind of force people to use smoke, or they force them to remove the Helots. And a lot of times they just end up being such an order sink for your opponents if you play them correctly. That like it just kind of, it's able to create a sort of like weird armory dynamic where you're able to defend the armory from outside of it, which is really great. So yeah, they can create a really nice like offensive but defensive line that makes it really hard for your opponent to score into the armory. In basically every single list, I take 3 of them because they're amazing. So yeah, this is my armory list. In the mission that I ended up taking it, I got some pretty good use out of all of my guys. The Kamau died to a Sphinx. He went unconscious, and then I was able to bring him up with a paramedic, but he shot at the Sphinx, and I think he just like whiffed his shots or something like that, and he ended up going unconscious again. And yeah, that was that was pretty miserable. But you know, snipers and being one wound infantry, that's just kind of the name of the game sometimes. The Orc HMG kind of failed at his job too. I think he took a fight with like a TR bot and ended up taking a wound. So yeah, that was fun. um, but you know, he's always pretty solid. BS14 can kind of, well, BS14 in conjunction with 2 wounds can kind of get you out of a lot of sticky situations, so that's really nice. Patsy actually ended up being the MVP. She used her NCO order to run into CC with the Sphinx and decharge it to death, which is pretty great. I would not really recommend like doing that as a first line of, oh, like I need to remove a Sphinx, so I'm gonna decharge it with Patsy. Like that's not normally efficient, but you know, CC18 is not terrible, and a Sphinx doesn't have any martial arts skills, so it's kind of a coin flip. And the coin flip, for me at least, like hitting the decharges is amazing, because you know that's gonna be an explosive save with AP damage 13, which is a 50% chance to take a wound on each dice roll, which is pretty great. So I ended up actually killing the Sphinx with that. Yeah, that actually worked out pretty well for me. And then obviously the Montesas, as always, do really great. Again, I don't really like bikes, but they ended up doing a lot of work in the armory, so I can't really complain too much. So yeah, that was my armory list. I think it's got some teeth. I think if I were to have to go into armory again at some future tournament, I would probably end up taking this list, because it just performed really well. You have a lot of wounds, so you can kind of hold the armory pretty well if you don't end up getting second turn. And yeah, that's just kind of my overview of this list. This was definitely the better of the 2 lists, because it was built specifically for armory and it worked well. But my first list, which was kind of a meme at the time, yeah, it ended up doing pretty decent in the first match, but in my third match, Frontline, it kind of ended up screwing me over a little bit. I knew as soon as I went against the Morats player that it was gonna be an uphill battle. Not because like Morats are broken or anything. It's just because of the list that I chose to make and the fact that it just doesn't have a lot of tools. But I'll just go over it right now. So as you can see, I've got a Squalus multi-marksman rifle and a Squalus NCO HMG. So the idea I was kind of going for was, well, you know, well, this was actually before the Blade Ops update, so I didn't even know that was going to exist. But the idea here is, of all of the Pano factions, I felt like Varuna could support a double Squalus list the best, because you have so many cheap like defensive units in the Helots that you're really able to create an amazing screen that ends up getting your tags, I guess not out of sticky situations, but it keeps them out of them, because by having all of these neurocynetics gunfighters, you're able to force a lot of situations where your opponent is having to spend a ton of orders smoking down the field, making sure they're not having to take bad fights against Helots and everything. And if you play your Helots really well and really effectively, which I don't think I really did in my third round, but if you are able to play them really effectively, in 80% of your games, you're probably going to be able to keep your tags very safe and out of CC, which is very important. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. the reason they're in the two groupings that I have them in, the NCO Squalls is just the fire support tag. He's going to be using he's basically has 4 dedicated orders that he can use to clear any arrows necessary. And in the 2 games that I took him frontline and last launch, he ended up just doing his job super well. Well, not as well in frontline, but that was more of a unlucky type situation and not his profile. Yeah, but the NCO is really nice. It makes it to where you can kind of keep him in your second group, and he's not taking orders away from your main group, but he's able to do his job really well. You can always use command tokens to convert the Hellot orders if you need the extra ones, but I found in most cases it wasn't really necessary. I was able to get the job done with the BS-15 multi-HMG. The Squalls multi-marksman is a little bit trickier. Yeah, Burst 3, even on BS-15, is pretty bad. There are a lot of times, especially against like mimetic gunfighters or just mimetic units in general, that you're kind of gonna struggle to put wounds down. And I don't know. In my head, I thought, oh, the multi-marksman rifle is gonna be so good on the active turn because he's burst 3 from 24 inches all the way down to 0 inches because he's got the +1 burst multi-pistol. But as I found out in my games, yeah, the burst 3 just doesn't really do it. You're kind of relying on luck. There are a good amount of cases where you're able to do damage, but the -1 burst between him and the normal HMG grenade launcher one really hurts a lot of times. Like, you're gonna end up spending a lot more orders trying to clear stuff like Fugazis, and it just makes your attack runs really order inefficient, which is a huge negative because they're tagged. So a lot of times you're gonna have to clear the way with your non-hackable units, even though I didn't take any of those, and that ended up biting me in the butt in frontline. But yeah, overall, I think the pistol, or I think the profile actually has some good weight, just because of the +1 burst multi-pistol and its relatively cheap price point. But at the same time, I don't really know that I'm going to be taking it anymore, at least not in Varuna. It wasn't bad, it just never really accomplished what I wanted it to do as effectively as I wanted it to do. So that was kind of a bummer, but also I kind of knew it was going to happen. I just wanted to try out the multi-marksman rifle just to see, you know, am I just being kind of like, or am I just judging the profile based on not having used it? And after having used it, I can say it is certifiably mediocre. Yeah, and then the rest of the list is pretty obvious, I feel like, except for the EB. But yeah, I've got a Fusilier core team that's pure with the multi-sniper. This is a solid team. I mean, there's not really much to talk about. It's pretty good. BS-15 is nice. A lot of times you can do some pretty good work with it on active turn if they end up surviving, even though honestly that's pretty rare. But yeah, sometimes you get lucky. I don't know. It's a good team. I really enjoy taking them. Just standing up like Fusiliers in your backline on burst 2 is kind of nice sometimes. Like, they're like functionally tiny little Hellots that can sometimes do not do, but like, I guess like deter warbands from running into CC with you. Anyway, core team's pretty good. Zoo, Cobra, Killer Hacker, as I said earlier, pretty good. He does a lot of great things, like classified, and he can also go on some pretty good attack runs. And then finally, honestly, he was kind of the king of my list in frontline, but he did absolutely nothing in in last launch. So yeah, I do actually think my mind was changed about the Echo Bravo though. I'd never really liked them very much. I used to take the white shotgun, white rock or the sorry boarding shotgun white rocket launcher profile, but the burst 2 always kind of I don't know. It was never enough. And so it kind of turned me off a little bit. But then I started taking the combi profiles, and BS13 with the combi rifle for 26 points. He's a hacker. He has a Panzerfaust. He can kind of do like a lot of weird things that a lot of your other profiles can't. He's a very niche profile, but sometimes he really comes into clutch. And had I actually understood Frontline as a mission a little bit better, he probably could have tied the game for me. And he almost did. But yeah, overall, I would say this list was okay. But there are some pretty outstanding weaknesses. I'd say the biggest one is the fact that your 4 main pieces, so the Squalus, Echo Bravo, Zoo Cobra, and the other Squalus, they're all hackable, and that is a huge detriment to the list sometimes. In my third round against Ape Strong, he took a Dartok and he put down like just a few repeaters, and he basically locked me out of ever going into his DZ, because I just had no way to like reliably clear a dogged hacker. And I mean, I get that the Dartok is a pretty exceptional hacker, but it really just goes to show the weakness of this list, and that all of your main pieces are hackable. And so like I'd have to be coin flipping a fight with the Zoo Cobra in that situation, and the Zoo Cobra is so important for classified objectives a lot of times that I can't really sacrifice him for that sort of thing. So yeah, overall, I would say that my lists were pretty good for the tournament. My first list won me my first game, and then my second list ended up winning me my armory match. But like, I don't know. Yeah, there's just some apparent weaknesses, and I don't think I'll ever be running a double Squalus in Veruna again. That's just kind of my take. It's just my experience, my anecdotal experience in the tournament. But I really enjoyed it. My third match with Ape Strong was probably the most frustrating, but the most fun. It was just frustrating because he's such a good and conservative opponent that playing against that with a list like this was just really tricky, and I felt like I couldn't do anything. In the entire game, I was just thinking to myself like, oh, I have to keep my Squalus alive, or else I'm just going to lose the mission. And he really pressured me into that mindset because I just couldn't really kill anything reliably. And that was all due to his skill. I mean, I think the dice was like a little bit favored maybe in his direction, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I mean, he was so skilled, and he played so conservatively that it was really just all down to the way that he performed. And so that was honestly one of my favorite matches like of all time. But I really got to test the limits of this list, and seeing them, I don't think it really has very much teeth in the future. I will definitely be returning to my beautiful cutter. She never fails me. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little list review. I had a great time playing in the IGL tournament, and yeah, I can't wait for the next 3 rounds. I probably won't make it to the top 16 after losing so poorly to Ape Strong, But either way, I'm gonna be trying out some different lists, and who knows? Maybe I'll make another video about those lists. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see y'all in the future. Later.